Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 45, brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear. Today we're joined by hunter, angler, gardener, and cook Hank Shaw to talk about taking game from field to table. So stay tuned. All right. Hello, whitetail friends, freaks, whatever we are. Happy Wednesday. John, are we friends? Are we freaks? Is freaks a derogatory term when we're talking about whitetail folks?
No, it's. I think everybody goes by their own thing.
Yeah, you think it's acceptable? We won't get any flack. There's no snowflakes that feelings might get hurt about it.
Surely no. Just minor hate mail.
Minor hate mail. This podcast is brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear, the longest lasting, fastest cutting, toughest tree trimming equipment you have ever used. Simply put, the toughest saw on earth. Right now, when you visit wickedtreegear.com, use the promo code TRUTH at checkout and get a 20% discount on your Wicked purchase. Exodus Outdoor Gear. Y'all like trail cameras. John, you like trail cameras?
Dude, I'm a trail camera freak.
Oh, look at that. Even using the word freak. So it can't be offensive if we're continuing to throw it around. Exodus Outdoor Gear, life's a passion. Pursue it. You've heard me talk about these guys for a while, and they have kick-ass cameras, and now they're launching a new Exodus Trek camera coming in at $150. So you probably had seen some stuff on social where they were doing the pre-orders. You probably want to jump on that. They're doing a deal right now for an even steeper discount than $150 for the first, I think, 200 or so folks who order this camera. Visit ExodusOutdoorGear.com to pre-order for this new camera today and use the promo code TRUTH at checkout and save yourself an additional $20. We're also brought to you by Tecomate Seed. Everything is bigger and better in Texas. Would you agree, John? Don't mess with Texas.
I'm telling you, it's a big state. You know what I mean? So everything's got to be bigger.
Yeah, if it's bigger, it's got to be better. No matter if you're in the South, the Midwest, or the Northeast, Tecomate Seed has your food plot needs covered. And guys, if you are thinking of doing food plots this year, Tecomate has for a long time been heralded in the South. And if you have ever walked in the South or had spent any time in the South, you will notice that their soil is probably not the greatest for growing things. So if you can grow shit in Texas and grow it like wildfire, it's probably a pretty damn good seed. So visit Tecomate.com and check out their product selector tool to help pick the right seed for your needs. I like that, John, seed for your needs. A little alliteration there. Use promo code TRUTH at checkout and save 20% at Tecomate.com. And last but not least is Glacier Coolers. I know, John, you like to keep your beers cold, so why not do it with simply the world's finest? Whether you're hunting, camping, fishing, you'll enjoy smart design, stronger construction, and superior insulation of Glacier Coolers. Visit them at glaciercoolers.com. Again, promo code TRUTH for a 20% discount. And we are here, the beginning of January 2018, rolling along. Deer season for many of us is probably over. And for a lot of us, I've got just a handful, I think 2 weeks left if you're listening to this on the Wednesday that it comes out. And I'm going to try to get a little something done, man, but the weather has been brutal lately. John, how are you faring out there in Iowa? Has it been cold enough for you?
It's been super cold. My neighbors, I talked to them and I said, so is this what you guys were referring to as a typical Iowa winter? And they're like, hell no, this is even too cold for us. So it's been a unique winter, and it's been cold a lot in the Midwest, and I know the East has been super cold.
Dude, I like some tough hunting conditions. I usually am one to not shy away from it, but I'm not going to lie, man. I had to skip out on a hunt this weekend because I was just like, you know what? Well, so I'll put it this way. I was planning to go out on Saturday, and I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm going to go out on Saturday. And she looked at me, she said, you're an idiot. And I was like, well, most of the time this statement is probably true. It's probably true now. And so I was like, you know what? I'll text a buddy of mine and see if he wants to go out, because I wasn't going to go hunt necessarily and just kind of meander around and do a hunt scout. I was, it's cold enough where I was like, I just want to go into where I'm going to hunt and then, sit for a couple hours and get out. So I texted my buddy and I was like, hey man, what do you think? You want to go out this evening? And because it was a piece of property he has access to, and he texted me back. Exact wording was hard no. And so that pretty much sealed it for me, and I was thankful that I had a buddy who was smarter than me to kind of keep me indoors. indoors that day, man. But it's been wicked cold, dude. I don't know. I was talking to another buddy of mine that was in Michigan, and it was like in the negative 20, whatever it was. You probably had similar stuff out in Iowa, but he actually was starting to experience gear failure at that temperature.
Yeah, I mean, it was, well, yesterday my plan was to go out for my last sit, leaving, for the ATA show tomorrow morning. And so I was going to go get to hunt one last day of the season and, hang it up. I had a buddy that backed out at the last minute. He was going to go with me. He wanted to go, been talking about going, that kind of stuff. So nonetheless, he decided to not go. And I'm like, well, I'm heading out by myself. So I go outside and I'm like, wow, driveway's kind of icy. And I've got a pretty steep driveway. Mm-hmm. Long story short, 2.5 hours later, 400 pounds of rock salt hand thrown on my driveway. I was finally able to make it down my driveway. At that point, it was too dark. And that's it. My season's over.
Right. You were hunting the very elusive rock salt monster. I'm familiar.
It's ridiculous, man. So yeah, the ground temperatures were just so freaking cold around here, and then we got a lot of rain yesterday. And as soon as that rain landed, it just instantly turned in, and it was we were probably 2 inches thick of ice on our driveway.
Yeah, I think we're getting that same weather system now that you got, because today, everyone left work early because it was starting to rain and it was starting to freeze, and I went out to my truck and it was already pretty much just encased in ice by the time I got out there and so forth. But the cold, it's if you can get on deer right now, if you have a good food source, some corn or some type of grain, you'll probably be into chips pretty good, I'd imagine. It's just I don't have there's nothing around here right now that's even worthy of a reasonable food source. And this cold stuff, this super cold stuff, it's looking for some thermal cover is not a bad idea either. But that would also would mean that I would have to stay warm, which is like damn near impossible because I have the circulation of like an 80-year-old man in my feet, and those things just get like ice cubes. So I was.
You're like probably like my old man. He came up to Iowa from Kentucky during the holidays, and they basically came straight from Florida to Iowa.
Cool.
And they've got a little spot down there, little vacation spot. So he comes up and he spent the whole entire holidays sitting in front of the fireplace with his winter coat on and a toboggan on, gloves on, and he was just like, and he's hard of hearing, so he's like, bring me something to drink. And I'm like, well, do you want coffee? Huh? Do you want coffee? Huh? So I'm like, screw it. I just got him a cup of coffee. And then he's like, throw another log on the fire. He's like, it's cold in here, So he's bundled up, man. Like he's ready to go hang out on the North Pole.
Right.
Man, yeah, I envision that from the sounds of it, you're saying you're just as bad.
Yeah, and we were talking, before we jumped on the record here, what we keep our house temperature at. And, I keep mine at a balmy 60, 62, 61. I have it set to go down to 59 at night. And it's just, I'm cheap ass. What can I say? It's like, that's more hunting gear I could probably buy if I didn't have to spend as much money on oil. So like you were saying, I just tell the kid like, hey, layer up, throw in another set of pajamas and a robe and get cozy because daddy ain't spending any more money on oil. I got arrows to buy.
Yeah. What is gas or oil prices out there?
I don't know what it is for a gallon right now. I think I filled my tank up. It was at a quarter tank, and I want to say it was like $387, and I think I have a 300-gallon tank. Roughly.
Okay.
So
propane out here is about $1.49 in season. Sometimes it gets a little bit lower out of season, but when it's warm outside, you don't even, you know what I mean? It's just out of sight, out of mind. I wasn't even thinking about it. And we got into the season and I'm like, oh crap, we're going to run out of propane. So we had to call and fill up our tank. We've got a 1,000-gallon tank under the driveway.
Nice.
And, I'm like, give me 500 gallons. That'll be good.
Right. Nope. How quick do you run through that?
It'll be close. We started out the year with about 350 gallons. Mm-hmm. and so we added 500 to it. And we're estimating it's going to take us 1,000 gallons to get through the winter. So we might have some days in March, early April, where the kids might be going to bed with a sweater on.
Right. Heard that. Oh man, and I just ran out of firewood too. I got some firewood brought in and stuff here, in the fall, and I've already burnt through that too. So looks like we'll be paying the piper from here on out. But you know what this weather's good for? Ice skating.
What's that?
Ice skating.
Yeah.
You ever ice skate?
When I was a kid, we used to ice skate a whole lot. And I think it's more of a Northeast thing. Mm-hmm. Growing up in Kentucky, we typically didn't, if we wanted to go ice skating, we had to go to an ice skating rink.
Okay. Yeah.
So the ponds and stuff usually didn't quite harden up enough or get thick enough where you would chance it,
Right. What about roller skating?
Real big.
How about roller skating?
Roller skating, yes, dude. Put your left foot in.
Yeah.
Put your left foot out.
a little slow.
Put your left foot in. Yeah, you shake it all about. Yep. We used to do all that kind of stuff. There was a Champs Roller Dome. We used to go roller skating a whole lot.
Nice. I'm envisioning you.
That was the early days of. That's when I developed the silver tongue with the ladies.
There you go. No doubt, dude. We had it was an intermediate school. So we had like a primary school or elementary school rather than an intermediate before we went to the middle school. And there was a roller rink right next door. And so every Thursday was roller skating day. Like you would sign up at the beginning of the year, and every Thursday, they would take the students over and you would roller skate after school till 7 o'clock or so, and your parents would come pick you up. And I remember the roller skating days. Like I had my own skates. I played on the roller hockey team, and I could skate backwards pretty good. And that was definitely where you sharpened your skills with the ladies, with the old slow skate, the speed skate, where everyone went out and kamikazed into the wall because you were all young kids, and you would have good control. You felt like you could skate pretty well until like things got squirrely and your recovery wasn't so good, and so. There was always some disaster, and then there was always some type of drama, like someone didn't like someone, and someone was going to fight outside the roller rink after the speed skate, because someone I'm just imagining a young Johnny Utah with his flowing locks, with his flowing Kentucky waterfall mullet, just flowing, just in the flow around the roller rink, man.
Well, I'll be honest, I really couldn't skate that good. So a lot of the dudes were out there like skating and getting all hot and sweaty and, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like hanging out with all the girls.
There you go.
What's up?
Johnny Law.
Like I can get my mom to probably drive us to the mall to go see a movie this weekend. You know what I mean? Nice. So that was kind of my thing. Nice. And then I usually, I stayed away from the fights, man. When I was younger, I was a little guy, like really, really, really little. Right. So, I just made sure I was friends with everybody because I was like, God, I'll totally get my ass kicked. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I didn't do any of the tussling then because I was, I don't know. I weighed under 80 pounds all the way up until I was probably in like 8th grade or 7th, 8th grade.
I graduated college at 129 pounds.
Yeah, man. Damn, man. How tall are you too? I forget.
5'10".
5'10". Okay, so you were a thin fella at 5'10", buck 30.
I look like a refugee.
Oh man, that's good.
It was awful. It was horrible. But no, and then it was then it was years later that I started getting into the gym and then metabolism finally started slowing down and
right.
I was at the gym the other night. I got on the scale and I tipped it at 215 the other night. So
man, yeah. So that's a difference, man. Going from like the old days at a buck 30 to 215. Yeah. I'm damn near the same size I was when I graduated from high school. Because in wrestling, it's like, I wrestled anywhere from like 135 up to like 155, depending on what year and whatever. And I think that's what my fighting weight was actually whenever I left for Montana in September and was all in shape and ready to go out there. I think I weighed in at like 154 right before I left. So I was, that's probably the leanest I've been in a while, but it definitely was needed for the terrain. But I don't know, man, any other hunting updates? One update I wanted to give, and I just thought of it actually as we were getting ready to record was, so one, we missed our 1 year anniversary of the show this summer. Like somehow we missed it. I just thought of it today. It was in like August or June or something like that. I don't even remember when it is. That's how terrible I am. We missed that. So our 50th show is coming up. So I have to think of something fun or interesting to do for the 50th show. And the other thing the other thing I recognized too was that in almost coming up this summer on 2 years of having the show going, there has not yet been one F-bomb dropped on the entire show. In 50.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. There's not been one F-bomb. And so I feel like...
I really wish you wouldn't have said that.
I know, right?
Not that I'm going to like try to do it. It's just now I'll be thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'll be thinking about not saying it.
Yeah.
Anybody that knows me well and, especially knows my background and my family and stuff like that, the F-bomb is like... That's part of the normal vocabulary.
Oh, man.
You drop the F-bomb and somebody's like, watch your mouth. And I'm like, what'd I say?
What'd I say? Yeah, exactly.
I know the F-bomb. I mean, what'd I say?
Exactly. It's usually a pretty solid staple of my vocabulary most days. The only time I think during the course of any given day that I don't use it is during the time that we spend on the podcast together. That is like the only time I use it at work. Only in the correct company, of course, because other folks may not look so kindly upon it. But I was actually actually thinking of that today because I was like, still have a clean rating in iTunes. Imagine that. So that's not gone away yet.
Yeah.
But
no, it's funny you said because you're right. I mean, obviously that word offends some people, and out of respect for other people. Anytime I'm in a position where other people are listening to me talk, I try not to use it. I'm not a different person. I just try to make sure I leave that word out or whatever, Yeah,
because there's a handful of words that will really do that. You know what I mean? They're really like, there's those words. What was it? George Carlin did the 7 words you can't say on TV or radio or on broadcast or whatever. Some of those words are okay to say and people are okay, fine with it. But there are just a handful of, in today's world, what we'll call as trigger words. You know what I mean? Where it's like...
There's that C word that I know. Man. That's still a bad one.
Yeah, I don't know that... Yeah, you use that one, you got to be prepared. You know what I mean? Like, that's like pulling out... That's like hitting the nuclear button. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to take the situation from 0 to 60 pretty quick, Yeah,
that's the equivalent of hitting a girl in the junk.
Yeah.
They don't like that.
No, they do not. And I don't like it. That's a good one. But speaking of being politically correct, one thing that was interesting. So today, for those of you tuning in, John and I aren't going to continue to talk only about the F word in roller skating and sweet mullets at the roller rink. We have an awesome guest on today, Hank Shaw from the chef and the cookbook writer. Hank Shaw, I think he's written Buck Moose and Quail something Cottontail. He's getting ready to, I think, do a live event for on the West Coast. And what made me think of it was we were talking about being politically correct, and actually his background is interesting. That he came from a political writing bureau background where he followed, candidates that were running for governor. I think he actually moved to California. When he moved to California was to cover Schwarzenegger when he was running for office. And so he has a political background, which is really interesting. And, you'll hear during the course of the podcast, he really kind of got out of it because it was just so much ick, in politics overall that he retreated to the safe space, which is to climb into the woods and just remove himself from all human contact when he could to try to get his head right, which I think we all can kind of understand that, and I think that a lot of the reason why we all like to retreat to to a deer stand or to a goose blind during the off season, or even just to go do some shed hunting and stuff like that, is to get out and enjoy nature and allow ourselves some time to just clear our headspace and disconnect from the world at large, and just, connect ourselves with nature and things that are what might seem to be more real in a world that sometimes seems a little bit surreal. So with that, man, if we don't have any other updates, I think we can go ahead and get Hank Shaw cranking. This is a good show, and I hope you all enjoy it. And I'm sure you'll have some good recipes coming out of this conversation as well.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Before we continue our conversation, let's talk about Wicked Tree Gear saws. If you're tired of cheap-ass, flimsy hand saws, or better yet, a pole saw that doesn't work for a damn, try Wicked Tree Gear, the toughest saws on earth. And actually, right now, they're launching 2, as of ATA, new products. One is the Pro Blade that will fit onto any pole saw, and the other is the Beast hand saw. Both great products, so make sure to check those out when they are available on the website. And you can visit them at wickedtreegear.com and use the promo code TRUTH to save 20% on any purchase that you make on their website and receive free ground shipping. And now back to the show.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. Today, I'm super stoked to introduce the guest that I have on today. I've been waiting for a while, or been wanting to have this gentleman on for a while. I've been kind of following some of his information. I'm kind of a closet foodie. I enjoy kind of breaking down my own game and kind of using all the parts as much as possible. So this guy kind of fell right under that kind of title, or that category. And so I wanted to definitely have him on, especially because we've been talking about some stuff that is related to after the shot and after you harvest the animal. And the gentleman I'm speaking about is the one, the only Hank Shaw. He is a chef, a hunter, angler, forager, wild game food expert. He's always kind of looking for new and interesting things to cook up and get on the grill. He's written several books, just to mention a couple: is Buck, Buck, Moose, Duck, Duck, Goose, Hunt, Gather, Cook, and Pheasant, Quail, and Cottontail. So whenever you're talking about wild game preparation and how to make it happen in a good way, I think we have the right guy to talk to. So first and foremost, thanks for coming on the show, and how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm recovering from a snipe hunt yesterday, believe it or not.
Oh, snipe hunt. Do tell. How was that?
It did not involve a pillowcase, salt, or a flashlight, and it was during the daytime.
Oh, man, I know. I remember my first quote-unquote snipe hunt. I was in a field. I grew up in the country in Pennsylvania, and I was in a field with some older guys that were friends, of my friend's brother, and so they thought it would be funny to tell us about snipe hunting as we were sled riding down this hill, and I spent 2 hours of that evening walking through the snow trying to find snipes. Never found a snipe, and never been on a real snipe hunt. So I actually thought people were pulling my leg for a while whenever they were talking about snipe hunting. So we'll start there. What is a snipe, in fact?
A snipe is the last shorebird that we're allowed to hunt in North America. It's a relative of the woodcock.
Okay.
And where woodcock live in kind of boggy alder thickets, snipe like the borderlines of marshes and flooded paddocks and fields and things. They're real small birds. They're extraordinarily difficult to hit. I mean, the origin of the term sniper is from people who hunt snipe, because they flush erratically. They fly like a bat on methamphetamines, and they're like maybe the size of a dove. So
right.
it's a challenging hunt, but it's super fun. I mean, it might be the most. It's not the most calorie negative hunt I've ever been on. I've hunted ptarmigan at 13,000 feet. That's clearly the most calorie negative hunt ever.
Yeah, exactly.
But this would be a close second.
Nice. I like the visual I got with a bat on methamphetamines. That was a fantastic visual right there. That's awesome. So I gave you a little bit of an introduction there, and like I said, I had been following your information for a while, your blog. And then, of course, I had listened to you in a couple different formats. I'm a little bit of a closet foodie. Buck Moose was on my Christmas list for this year, so hopefully someone will get that for me. It'll be the first year that I actually got something that was on my list. So hopefully that comes to yeah, hint. But before we kind of jump into a bunch of topics that what we want to cover today, why don't you give us a little bit of information about yourself, your background, where you're from, how you started hunting and fishing, and so forth.
Sure. I live in Northern California now, although I've lived in 6 or 7 states. I lose track. I was born in New Jersey, near Newark.
Okay.
So not born in the country. I was born as a True Blue Giants fan. We had season tickets, so we're sad this year.
Yeah, very sad.
Very, very sad. But I've been fishing and foraging since I was a young kid. So those pieces of this puzzle I've always been involved in. So I mean, I have these gauzy memories of me being in the 1970s, picking beach peas and blueberries and digging clams and things. And then, there's pictures of me with my first fish was like a fluke, a flounder, when I'm like 4 or 5 years old and that kind of thing. So I've got that in my DNA, but I didn't really start hunting until I was 30.
Okay.
So I picked it up when I was living in Minnesota. And so I'm 47 now. So the last 17 years have been this increasing whirlwind to the point where I'm now spending easily 90 days a year in the field for something, whether it's fish or snipe or deer or elk or antelope, ducks. I'll be goose hunting tomorrow morning, for example.
Man, goose is something that I just got into, and that is kind of grabbed a hold of me with a vengeance. I went for my first time last weekend, and now that's all I want to do. Yeah.
We hunt specks and snows in NorCal. A lot of people don't know that Northern California is home to 9 million wintering waterfowl.
Wow.
So we shoot more birds in California than any state other than Louisiana.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of birds, man. So that's wild. You're from New Jersey. I live in right outside Philadelphia right now. So
there you go.
Not too far from your original stomping grounds. I'm curious though, man, because I know, like, as you'd mentioned,
we might have to stop this conversation if you're an Eagles fan.
Oh no, I grew up near Pittsburgh, so I'm a diehard Steeler fan. Yeah, so
we can still talk.
Yeah, we're okay. We're okay. I was reading your story a little bit, or just like a little bit of your background and stuff on your blog, of course, and I found it really interesting because you've had kind of like a circumlocucious, if you will. I'm going to throw out a 25-cent word there. It's the only time you'll probably ever hear me use that word. It was a bit of a wild ride from, I know you did some political writing prior to getting into
that was my life for 18 years.
Yeah. So how does someone go from that type of, life to what you do now, which is like, you're very much in the truest sense, kind of a hunter gatherer, right? I mean, that's like your life evolves around that approach. So I'm curious how you make that transition from something that's completely departed from that to a degree.
I think in some way, you get a chance to think about this question because I get asked it a lot.
Right.
And, given the chance that I've had to reflect upon really what's happened, it's a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you work on Capitol Hill or on some state's Capitol Hill. My last Capitol, that's the reason why I moved around a lot, is because I was kind of an itinerant state government reporter. So I covered capitals in a number of states. So when that's your day in and day out, the ability to get into nature in any form, whether it's I've never actually hunted in a deer stand. We can talk about that later. But whether it's deer hunting or ducks or picking mushrooms or getting a day in the water or even just scouting. It's not someone lying to you every day. It's not, the hypocrisy that you get. And especially as, I'm not going to get too political, but in the general sense, when I started that job, politics is about compromise and debate. It was about people with very different points of view in different regions coming together and wrangling over a problem and solving that problem.
Right.
And over the years that I covered politics, it became less that compromise and debate and more people shouting past each other.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what your politics are. That's boring.
Right.
It's just boring, I mean, like you're a poopy head. No, you're a poopy head.
Exactly.
And it's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. So the woods or the fields or the waters became my solace, and it became a place where I could get away from that ick. It's the shower that you need to take after you cover Congress.
Yeah, I can completely kind of understand that feeling. And I think for a lot of people too, they may not be able to articulate it, but I think a lot of people look for that, and that's one of the reasons why they are so passionate about the outdoors, right? Because it's the one place where you can go to be with your own thoughts. And in a lot of cases, because hunting and or fishing, in many instances, is a solo sport or a solo adventure. I particularly find, I did some Western hunting this year, and for me, The Western hunt wasn't as mind clearing, I guess you would say, even though the vistas were amazing and the mountains you were climbing were beautiful and stuff like that. But it was such a mental and physical, struggle, and grind, that you really didn't have time to decompress and be with your thoughts, because you were just trying to make it up over the next mountain, into the next, drainage or the next dark timber or whatever. For
Flatlander.
Me,
Seriously, I'm not to bust your balls too bad, but you get used to that.
Yeah.
And then if that becomes your style of hunting, then we get that same sort of mental break that you get in a stand.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know how I would handle a stand, actually. I might go bonkers.
Right, for sure. And I definitely recognized as I was doing it, where I was like, for me, it was different. So it was probably a lot of sensory overload too, because everything I was doing, because this was my first trip west to hunt, and so everything I was doing was the first time, you know what I mean? So it was a lot to take in, where, that was a 2-week trip. And then I spent a week with a buddy hunting some whitetail in Ohio, took a trip. And that for me was a very peaceful, reflective, meditative kind of hunt, because it was 12 hours on stand with nothing but my own thoughts, and the only physical or mental toll was the hike in and the hike out, really, and making the plan for the next day. So that's so I can totally understand where you need the cleanse, and it's a nice reset button to hit.
For sure.
But you kind of went, all whole hog and was like, what was it that was like, I'm going to start. Did you always kind of cook? Was it okay? So,
I have a restaurant background. So before I was a newspaper reporter, I was a low-level chef in restaurants. So, line cook and sous chef at a small place. I never owned my own restaurant. I never ran a full kitchen. And I actually had been really uncomfortable calling myself a chef until very recently, because I'd worked in restaurants and been a cook there, but it had been so long, I felt I kind of no longer earned the honor. And it's only been since since I started doing this full time again in 2010, that I've done enough of the things other than cook, because a chef's not a cook.
Right.
All cooks are chefs, not all. Well, I'm sorry. All chefs are cooks, not all cooks are chefs.
Right.
And I've only recently kind of earned my stripes back to be able to be okay with that moniker. But yeah, I have professional cooking experience from back in my college years, my early 20s.
Mm-hmm. And so it just kind of seemed like marrying that, passion for the outdoors and your passion for cooking seemed like the natural, because that's takes some cojones, right? Because, pretty good career path when you're, working in, the environment you were working in before with the, the political kind of writer career, right? And it's kind of takes some cojones to say, you know what, I'm going to cut bait and just go left here, right? So what was that like, I guess,
it was scary
moment?
I'm not going to lie to you. It's I was a bureau chief. I moved to California to cover Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay.
And so my bureau shut down in 2008. And so I can kind of saw the writing on the wall. It was a bad time for newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to save money a lot.
Right.
And then I was working for a kind of an insider baseball political junkie newsletter for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, I was ramping up Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook, which is probably how you first heard of me.
Right.
It's the website that I've been running now for 10 years.
Yep.
And I was nominated for a James Beard Award for that website in 2009,
mm-hmm.
and then again in 2010. So when you get there's I don't know, it's the Oscars of the food world. That's just the easiest way to put it. There's no higher honor in our world than that award. And when you get nominated, you're in the top 3. So you're already on the podium.
Right.
And that opened a lot of doors. So it basically gave me the courage, plus the fact that I had a year's worth of expenses in the bank. So in case it went south, I wasn't gonna, be living in a van down by the river.
Right. Even though it is attractive some days.
Yeah. And, Chris Farley, may he rest in peace.
Right. Yes, exactly.
But yeah, so I'm like, all right, let's give this a go. And, I took a massive pay cut, and it was scary as hell, but it worked. And each year got a little bit better and a little bit better. And then, now I'm in, it's not like I'm driving Ferraris or, $80,000 pickup trucks or anything, but I can pay the bills and do what I love.
And feel good about it with a clean conscience, which is, I think, the most important thing, right? You know?
Yeah, so many of my colleagues who lost their journalism jobs, they ended up becoming spokespeople or corporate spokespeople or campaign people, and you're not supposed to do that as a reporter. You
Right.
know, I mean, as we always like to say, neither side has a lock on idiocy.
Right.
So, I mean, when you cross the floor, you got to pick a side, and I couldn't do that. I still can't do that.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's I like to say that I'm pretty middle of the road. I like to say that I'm an intelligent observer and aggregator of information. That's kind of how
The older I get, the more I feel like Mr. Hand from Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
I know.
What are you people? On dope?
I know, right?
Soon I'll be shouting at clouds.
Oh, I know. It's like I definitely feel like the old man on my. I was out looking at my lawn because my neighbor's doing a bunch of renovations at their place. They're putting a second story on, and we had a bunch of snow, and of course my yard was wet, and someone ran their truck through like part of the edge of my yard, and it just like infuriated me. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh my god, if 16-year-old you would see you right now, he would punch you in the face. Getting pissed off about my yard. So. But let's shift gears here to hunting.
Sure.
I want to talk to you a little bit about hunting. I'm just kind of curious. You've lived in a bunch of different places, right? And you kind of talked about what you were hunting and or fishing. I guess you mentioned fishing most specifically with New Jersey. But what did you hunt predominantly growing up, and then what do you predominantly hunt now? I guess is there a species that you focus on mostly?
So I started when I was 30.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
So
that's
I didn't hunt at all growing up. And in fact, weirdly, I didn't know any hunters growing up.
Oh,
so, what I started hunting is what I hunt now. So, probably small game. Small game is probably the most. I'm more comfortable with a shotgun in my hand than a rifle.
Okay.
But weirdly, I'm a much better rifle shot than I am a shotgun shot. So I'm good at a shotgun. I'm okay. But I know people who are better than me. A lot of people. But I'm unusually good with a rifle for some reason. I think it's just because I have a slow heart rate and I don't really get buck fever because I don't care.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, that was a nice deer. Let's shoot it.
Right. Right.
And let me say this: I have not yet gotten buck fever. So I believe that buck fever is the same thing as seasickness, which is you may not yet have been seasick,
right,
but there is an ocean condition out there that will get you seasick. So.
Right.
I'm sure at some point there's going to be some probably like Boone and Crockett, and then there'll be like some guy next to me who knows deer will be like, "Holy shit! Oh my god! Oh my god!" I'm like, "Should I be excited?" I'm like, "Yes, you should."
Yeah, you should be freaking out right now. So so are you predominantly hunting California now? Or are you taking some adventure hunts every year?
All over the country.
Awesome.
I like. Weirdly, I just shot my first whitetail buck.
Nice.
I've shot lots of mule deer bucks and lots of blacktail bucks. But the whitetail buck is a coos deer of all things. So, it's a pretty nice one too. But I love deer hunting in the sense that it connects me with arguably a million years of hominid background. I mean, deer made us human, and something like a deer made us something like a human, and there's a cultural, biological weight to deer hunting that freaks me out a little bit, but also makes the pursuit more rewarding, weighty, serious than, say, going rabbit hunting.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. Like I've listened to, when you mentioned the biological piece of it, right? It's like I've listened to Joe Rogan quite a bit. I like his podcast, and I also get into kind of some of the medical side of, I'm kind of into fitness and stuff like that. So like the whole idea of like what your body goes through whenever it's acquiring wild protein, right, is very much like a natural predatory kind of reaction or approach that we have, and it does something to us physically. You know what I mean? Like and that's one of the things that he talked about on like one of his shows, and it kind of made sense a little bit to where like what you're saying is like there's this reaction that you have during that type of hunt, because I don't get the same when I goose hunt, when I turkey hunt, but whenever I elk hunt or whenever I'm whitetail hunting, like there's just like this different feeling that I have. And it's not I won't say it's an emotional feeling per se, you know what I mean? Because I think I can understand what that would feel like. But there's like this overwhelming something that I don't know how to describe it, but you just feel different. You know what I mean? So that's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people listening to this will go through their own thoughts and be like, yeah, that's right. You don't necessarily put it into words all the time, but it's different. I mean, there are guys, most of us probably listening to this, we'll go look for, a runner deer for as long as it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I know lots of duck hunters who, if they sail a bird, like, oh, sailed a bird.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just different,
Yeah, there's definitely some type of connection, because you'll track a deer for days to try to find it and be, it impacts you. You know what I mean? I guess is the easiest way to say it.
I lost a deer overnight once, and I couldn't sleep.
Yeah. I mean, knock on wood, I've helped buddies. I've not had my own experience, and of course, as soon as I say that, I'm going out right after Christmas, so it's like,
wah, wah.
Yeah, I know. I just screwed myself basically.
I love the TV shows where it's like, I think we shot him just a little far back, and it's like, there's like, grass coming out of the arrow, and
right.
They hold the deer up, and it's like 17 days later,
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So that's cool, man. How about so you're already out west. I was going to say head out west, but that's only for us flatlanders, as you had mentioned earlier. Did you head out to any, I guess, do any elk hunting this year?
I didn't hunt elk. This year, yeah. I guess I did. I hunted cow elk in Monument, Oregon in February.
Nice.
So that's this year.
How's that trip?
It was crazy. It was just crazy. I think we put 9 elk on the ground in 90 minutes.
Holy smokes, man!
Yeah,
that's a ripper.
It was pretty crazy.
It doesn't get much better than that.
I was all set to shoot this thing at 450 yards, and she walked up 50 yards, shot her offhand, blasted up the heart. She died where she stood. Dunsky. And it's like, you never know what's going to happen, right? You're used to this sniper shot, which is what I did with the Coos deer. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there it is. Let's shoot it. And okay, get the knife.
Game over. Nice. The only thing that I get sad about after a early success is just that I kind of look at it, I'm like, all right, so now I don't have an excuse to get out of like household duties and get into the timber.
Oh, sure you do. Yeah. Well, honey, I got to process this thing myself. Hank told me.
Oh yeah, no, I did that this year. So this is we'll get into some processing later, but I got to tell you this story since you brought it up. So I shot my buck this year during archery season, and had a freezer and stuff, and I kind of took care of it on the spot and got him, I got the deer skinned and quartered at least, so I could get him from my buddy's parents' place back to my house, and I had time to take care of it right away. So I put it in the freezer. Waited till the following weekend where I had some time, busted out the meat grinder, did some carving and grinding, and my daughter had one of her friends over. Now, my daughter shoots a bow and she goes hunting with me. She's only 9, but she's cool with it. It doesn't bother her. She's been around it since, all of her life. So her friends are running around, and I've got like these whole like deer legs laying up on the
it's
counter.
Like Goodfellas.
Yeah, exactly. And I made
Paulie, we won't see Paulie no more.
Yeah, I was like, I asked her, I was like, do you know what this is? And she's like, no. I was like, well, this is a deer leg. And she just looked at my daughter like, just like white face, like couldn't believe that was happening. So, but I just figured I owed her a little bit of an education. I figured it was my duty to do that.
That's where meat comes from.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of, where food comes from, the other side of it, and I definitely want to get into like the deer and the processing here in a few seconds, but I also want to kind of touch on, like, I know you do a lot of foraging as well. And I know you had mentioned that was something that you definitely were doing early on, as early as you can remember. Yeah. So what types of things are you particularly like? So since you're kind of knowledgeable, particularly about, the area that I live in now, the Pennsylvania area, like what types of things would you forage for? The things that I'm used to kind of going after is the, morel mushrooms in the spring, but that's the only foraging that I've ever really done. What are some other opportunities for folks that live in the kind of like the northeast, mid-Atlantic kind of region?
Well, the cool thing about your region is that the flora of the East is very, very similar all the way to the Great Plains, all the way up to Ontario, all the way down to Jacksonville. And so that huge swath of the eastern seaboard, all going on all the way to the prairies of, Wisconsin and Illinois. So anybody who lives in that part, it's all the same pretty much. There's going to be more of one thing and less of another, but it's not uncommon to find the same set of plants in Alabama as it would be in Vermont.
Wow.
So mushrooms, God, there's mushrooms. The problem with you guys is all mushrooms are rain dependent, but your rains are way more variable than ours.
Right.
We have a rainy season and a dry season. And so when it's a rainy season, we know they're going to be there. And for you guys, you got mushrooms all the way from your other spring mushroom besides the morel would be the pheasant back.
Okay.
And then there's just a succession of edible mushrooms that will go all the way until the first snow. You've got all kinds of berries. I mean, the eastern berries, good blueberries. You've got any number of bramble fruits. And sort of a pro tip, anything that looks like a blackberry, like any berry that has the structure of a raspberry or a blackberry is edible.
That's good.
They're all edible.
Nice.
So you're never going to go wrong on that one. And in terms of the Vaccinium clan, which is the blueberry clan, so a lot of times you'll hear like, oh no, you can't eat X or Y berries. Well, the trick with any of the blueberry clan is that if you pick up a blueberry, store-bought blueberry or anything like that, and you look at the bottom of the berry, there's kind of a star pattern on the bottom of the berry. It's a very distinctive pattern. It used to be where the flower was. If you see that pattern, and this is the cool thing about being a human, we're really good at pattern recognition.
Right.
We're one of the best animals in the world at pattern recognition. And so if you memorize that star pattern on the bottom of the blueberry, any berry in the wild that you see that has that star pattern is edible.
That's pretty cool.
Yep. So they are all bushes too. So they're all some sort of shrub. The tallest I've ever seen them is about eye height, but usually they're lower bushes.
Right.
You've got cranberries. If you know someone who knows where a cranberry bog is and they tell you, they want something from you because that's something you guard jealously. You've got acorns, you've got hickory nuts of various forms. You have butternuts. Butternuts are really good.
Interesting. I never even thought of that.
You got hazelnuts if you know where to find them. Hazelnuts are always a fight with the squirrels.
Yeah.
Your seaside foraging is really good. You've got sea rocket. You've got pickleweed, which is it's Salicornia is the actual name of it, but it's got a zillion names like saltwort, glasswort, pickleweed, chicken feet, sea beans.
I've heard sea beans before.
You've got all seaweeds in North America are edible, except for like one or two, and the ones that are not edible just taste bad. They won't poison you. So there's a thing.
That's good to know.
You've got rose hips. Out in the east, you have these rugosa roses, which have big, bright red rose hips that are, they're big. They're like the size of a cherry pepper.
Right.
And they're fantastic. You don't want to eat the seeds. The seeds are what they make itching powder out of, but you eat the fruit out around it.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I mean, in fact, you are a very good spot to learn from the greatest forager of them all, a guy named Ewell Gibbons.
Ewell Gibbons. I'm writing this down.
Yeah, Ewell Gibbons. If you're listening to this and you're of a certain age, you'll remember him. If you're really old, you'll remember him because he was a household name at one point in the 50s and 60s. And I wasn't alive then, but in the 70s, he did Grape Nuts cereal commercials. And so the joke was, he basically, do you ever eat a pine tree? Most parts are edible. And he's a kind of funny, cranky old guy. But he lived in Pennsylvania.
Nice.
And he lived in eastern Pennsylvania. So all of Ewell Gibbons' books, Stalking the Wild Asparagus is the most famous one.
Okay. Nice. So I'm curious, man, with mushrooms, right? Because that's something that I definitely go out and try my hand at. Is there? I always hear people talk about, they grow next to birch trees or they grow next to whatever. Like, is there any type of tree that would signify where there's going to be a certain crop of a certain type of mushroom? Is that something that's true, or is that something that just people?
It's true, but it's regional.
Okay.
So elms are big for morels where you live. Oaks are always good for boletes, and bolete, B-O-L-E-T-E, it's a big family of mushrooms. They don't have gills. They have like spongy pores underneath them. And most boletes happen to like oaks, so do amanitas. And amanitas also like, and almost all amanitas are poisonous. But a general rule is if you see an amanita mushroom, chances are a bolete is going to be somewhere around because for whatever reason they're connected. We have an edible amanita here in California called Amanita villosa, which you find it after the rains in March next to oaks. So yes, those kinds of associations are true. Like if you live in the middle of the country and you're looking for morels in the spring, cottonwoods. Cottonwood morels are a thing in like Oklahoma and Kansas and those kinds of places.
Interesting. Are there any parts of the country that you prefer personally in terms of their forage versus others? Is there a place that's vastly different?
The West is the best, baby. I mean, it just is. I mean, it's if we could get rid of the actual people in California, it'd be awesome. Because I mean, if you think about it, California is it's weird in every respect. It's weird in the people are weird, the politics are weird, the set of crops that we grow are weird. The environment is weird. We have so many microclimates. We have like some incredible percentage of the plants and mushrooms in California only live in California. We have like 37 kinds of currants and gooseberries. Jeez. You guys have like 2.
Right.
So, and we have, I mean, I can go out. In fact, it just rained a bunch out here. So I'm planning on going out for mushrooms in the next week or so. There's a chance that I'll be able to pick 14 different kinds in one trip.
Holy smokes, man.
So yeah, I mean, it's no contest. I mean, that doesn't mean I don't love foraging Minnesota or New England or, Texas, but it's just, if you're looking for something to, I mean, again, like, yeah, we had a frost this morning, but it was a high 55. So all of those spring greens, we get them in the dead of winter.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the microclimates too, it's like just that diverse climate would just kind of lend itself to a diverse food opportunity,
So like if you're in a river bottom in Pennsylvania, you'll have one set of plants, but if you go up to the top of your mountains, you'll have another set of plants. And we have that too, but just more of it.
In spades.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting, man. So I want to shift gears here and talk about preparation, and we can kind of frame this around deer specifically, but I also want to just hear things about different types of game, because I'm interested in eating pretty much anything I can get my hands on that's game protein, be it fish or deer or elk or whatever the case might be.
In Pennsylvania, you got to eat your woodchucks.
I've never had woodchuck, man. I've had squirrel, rabbit, of course.
Woodchuck's not as good as squirrel, but good old woodchuck's basically deer.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if you put it in a pot roast, this is great venison. Yeah, it's woodchuck. It's mild. It's red. It's there's nothing wrong with it. It's like muskrats, not so good. You can make muskrat good, but you have to make a muskrat good. You don't have to do anything to a woodchuck or a deer to make it taste good.
So I think I know. So okay, woodchuck. Is there a particular?
I don't want to get you too far off the field, but
right.
But
I'm just curious. I'm just curious. So like, when would be a good time of year to kill and eat woodchuck?
Whenever you see them.
Really? So they don't have like a time of year where they'd be better?
Well, they kind of sort of hibernate. The whole groundhog thing.
Right.
It depends on how. I mean, occasionally you can see them in the winter, but I usually, when I lived in Virginia, I used to shoot them in fall.
Okay. All right. So back onto our deer topic.
Yep.
So what I was going to kind of mention is that there are plenty of people out there, or a lot of people out there. It's like, and I'll even run into hunters that kind of feel this way too, that kind of turn their nose up at game or maybe specific parts of wild meat, right? And so what are some of the things that you think folks might be doing wrong, in taking, a deer that's, say, specifically from field to table that might taint or create a dish that's, less than ideal? What are the things that they should be keeping in mind when they're recovering their meat to make sure that they're going to have the best possible experience at the table?
Okay. So if you're all right, so you shot a deer, now what? You've ceased being a hunter and now you're a butcher. Okay. So you have to toggle. So got the deer where you find it, period, end of story. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only exceptions to that is if you can get it up on a gambrels with a hose and cool it down within, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you can do that in the East. And I mean, I've done it in the West a couple of times, but if you actually have to pack the thing, or if you're going to be more than, I mean, it depends on temperature, but if you're going to be more than 30 minutes, it's kind of a general rule of thumb. Just got the thing there.
Right.
Because the thermal inertia of a large animal. I mean, anything from a turkey or a goose on to something larger, their body mass is so big that they won't cool right unless you hollow them out.
Okay.
So what I always do is I carry some Ziploc bags, and once you get all the innards out, I save the heart, I save the liver on young animals, and I save the kidneys. And if you do it right, you can save the caul fat as well. And the caul fat is this lacy, it looks like fat lace, and it surrounds the gut cavity. It is money. It's basically what you use it for is, as you know, venison's lean.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wrap a piece of backstrap in this caul fat and grill it, it keeps the backstrap super moist.
Interesting.
I have a couple recipes on the website that use it. They're both sort of meatball-y things. The French one's called crepinettes. It's basically a French meatball wrapped in caul fat. Sounds fancier than it is.
It sounds good is what it sounds.
It is really good. And I don't want to get too far afield in this because probably one person listening to this will do it, but you can actually make venison tripe as well. That's a deal where you need to be at a ranch.
Okay.
Because, cleaning out a deer stomach is an icky business, and I'm only going to do it if I've got a hose nearby.
Right.
But it can be done. So anyway, you've got your standard organs. You set them on top of the plastic bags so that they cool off. You don't want to put a warm thing in a plastic bag. It's a bad idea.
Right.
And so then you've got your deer opened, and then all right, we're on our way. So once you have the thing up, you can do a number of things. So if you've got to quarter it, if you're off in Nowheresville, like I often am,
right,
you skin the animal and then you quarter it out, and you do that. You're doing that to pack it out, but you're also doing that, and you don't go any further than that because there's a thing called shortening, and you have a race when the animal hits the ground. You need to do these initial butchery. You need to do this initial butchery work before the animal gets into rigor mortis.
Okay.
If you cut an animal when it's in rigor, you get this process called shortening. And shortening is, so imagine, like, everybody listen to this, hold out your arm and hold it out tight, right? Now imagine somebody just cut your bicep. That bicep's going to roll up like a Venetian blind.
Right.
And if the animal is in rigor, it's going to stay that way. So you often will hear somebody, well, yeah, I shot this doe, but the backstrap was really tough. Well, that's why. Because chances are you didn't let the animal rest enough before you cut the backstrap off the backbone. Now you can, if you get right on the animal, you can take it off before it goes into rigor, and that's a butcher's term called hot boning.
Okay.
And there's a secret to that too. So if you hot bone something, which is just is a gross term, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's.
Here we go. We're going to jail.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, butcher's terms are loaded with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my 12-year-old self just giggled while you said that, but it's okay.
You said hot.
Exactly.
If you do that, it's so full of, I want to say, phosphorus. There's a particular mineral or element in the meat that dissipates as the animal ages. That if you make sausages with meat that has been taken off the bone before the animal got into rigor, that has the absolute best binding qualities. Now, that's a little bit technical and sausage 3.0, but that's just it's a side note.
Right.
I mean, the basic point is get your animal in a position where it can hang out for a few days quickly.
Right.
And then you have to let it hang out for a few days. Well, the second biggest mistake people do is that they don't let it get through rigor. And you're talking 48 hours.
Right.
So you shoot the animal, you got them in quarters, or you're hanging them up. You've got no more skin, and just chill, man. Just give it at least 24, and really 48's better. You want to be able to bend those legs again.
Okay.
And when you can bend those legs again, then all right, finish the job. That's just getting it through rigor. That's not actually aging, but that will go a long way into to give you more tender meat.
Okay. So just so I'm clear, so you want the opportunity to hang, right, versus hot boning and taking the meat off the bone as quickly as you can, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
You can. I mean, I live in. I mean, it's often 100 degrees where I'm hunting,
Right.
so there's nowhere to hang it.
Right.
What you want to do is you want to get the animal in its initial stages,
Mhm.
whether it's hanging on a locker, or if I'm out in the field, quartered and the back strap off, before it gets into rigor. And then once you're there, you can sit back and drink beer for 48 hours because you don't want to do any more butchering on it until the animal is through rigor mortis.
Right. Okay.
That's not aging. That's just like the basic stuff that you need to do.
Right. That's actually, it's funny because by accident, I did it the right way this year. So
Yep.
I ended up shooting a deer where it was warm, the buck that I got, and we got it to my buddy's place and got it hung up. And it was probably in the 70s, like, low 70s when I shot it. And within probably 20 minutes of harvesting this deer, he was up with his hide off, the back straps out, and quartered, and on his way to cool.
Perfect.
So yeah, I felt like this is probably the first time ever that I did it the right way. It's interesting that you say, like, it totally makes sense when you're talking about shortening. Like, I totally, like, when you gave the analogy there, like, that totally made sense to me. And I could see how that would make it tough if you're doing your butchering whenever the shortening is happening, which would, give you less than an ideal scenario. What about, because you started mentioning hanging, and that you were saying, just letting it get through rigor isn't hanging. And I'm glad you made that clarifying point, because I wanted to kind of touch on hanging in general. And you hear all kinds of different philosophies from guys. It's like, you hang it with the hide on, you don't hang it with the hide on, you hang it for 5 days, you hang it for 10 days. What is the appropriate way to hang a deer and let it age, if that is what you want to do?
If you're going to hang a deer with a hide on, it better be damn cold.
Right.
Like, damn cold. Because, I mean, it's advantageous because you don't get that rind on the meat when you finally do skin it. But that hide holds in a lot of heat, and it can be dangerous unless you get it into a, and actually, if it was me, I would drop the locker to like 27 degrees or 26 degrees for the first, 8 hours or so that deer's hanging, and then kick it back up to 33 or 34, because you just want to get that deer cold. And aging occurs in red meats like deer or elk or beef. You want to be real close to freezing, so 33, 36 degrees, and if you're going to age,
right,
like aged beef,
mm-hmm.
You can go as long as you want, but if you want to taste it, it's 10 days to 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Would that hold
if
true
you want
for
to taste
venison?
if you want to taste that dry aged flavor, it's 10 days to 2 weeks, and really 2 weeks.
Wow. And does that hold true the same time period hold true for venison as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so are you more in the camp of, if you're going to age it, hang it and age it, do you prefer, I guess, let me ask it this way. Do you prefer to get the hide off versus leave the hide on to age?
I do, because I don't. Here's the sort of, I had a eureka moment when I was writing Buck Moose. There's no reason to age a whole deer. There's zero reason to age a whole deer, and here's why. Dry aged flavor, and I mean, this is not just letting it get through rigor mortis. This is actual aging.
Right.
If all of us who are listening to this who have eaten a dry aged steak, it's like, oh yeah, man, that was really good. Well, who's the last? I mean, you're not gonna get that. Oh yeah, I had that dry aged pot roast. It was really good. I had that dry aged shank. It was really good. I had that dry aged burger. It was really no.
Right.
No. Let's be serious, people. The only things that you want to dry age are things that you're going to eat medium rare or medium or rare.
Okay.
If it's red inside, dry age it. If you cook the hell out of it, you don't need to dry age it. So what that means is hind legs without the shank, and it means back straps, and that's it.
Right.
I mean, if you have an elk, you can dry age. You can dry age the shoulder because you can get some steaks out of an elk shoulder.
Right.
But on a typical deer, I mean, it's got to be a monster deer if you're going to get flat irons out of the shoulder, because that's the main steak that comes out of the shoulder is the flat iron.
Right. You'd be talking like a Canada like Alberta.
Yeah.
Something like that. One where you have a
It
chance
would
to
be
get
one of those, Jesus, it's coming right at us,
I shouted out of self-defense. I was afraid it was going to eat me. So another kind of myth or question, right, that you hear people, deer hunters, talk about and stuff like that is they'll talk about, shooting a young deer versus an old deer. Is there anything that makes the deer taste different, whether it's age, whether it's, shooting a buck during the rut, whether it's buck versus doe? Like, is there anything to that idea?
Yes, 1,000 times yes. So if you go through the steps we just talked about, a young deer will always be more tender. It's easier to eat well off a young deer than it is an old deer. That said, if I shot something like the picture in your Skype thing, which looks like a nice 10 point, could be an 8 point, I don't know what, but it's a bigger deer.
Right.
So if you shoot a deer like, yeah, man, I got a nice deer. If that's your thought, you need to dry age it. Because the best venison I've ever eaten were bull elk or big muleys that were right at the beginning of the rut.
Okay.
So the rut really makes a difference. So either pre-rut or like the first couple days of the rut. If you get them then and then you dry age them, they're phenomenal because they have an extra layer of flavor. I mean, just think about it. Okay, so you were talking about your 16-year-old self before,
right?
Who's more interesting, you or your 16-year-old self? I guarantee you're more interesting now than you were when you're 16.
Right.
I guarantee you.
Exactly.
And so eating quality of a deer is the same deal.
Okay.
So a young animal is going to be nice, be one note, but an older animal aged properly is going to be memorable. So now the rut is super important because if you get a big old swole up thing in the middle of the rut or even worse post rut,
right?
I think it's just stupid to shoot bucks post rut if you're going to eat them. It's just stupid because they're run down. They've lost a ton of fat. They've lost a ton of muscle tone. They're often wounded. It's just a bad idea from a cook's perspective. I mean, it might be great from an antler perspective, but terrible from a cook's perspective.
Right.
So yeah, that's 100% accurate. The other thing that, you mentioned diet, and diet does affect flavor in ways that are not as pronounced as, say, pigs or bear or ducks. Because remember, pigs and bears and ducks are all omnivores, and deer are not.
Right.
And I know there's that one guy he listened to that's like, I saw a deer eat a mouse once. I'm like, yeah, okay, they once in a while they do,
right?
But 99.999% of their diet is plants,
right?
So their flavor differences are not going to be as pronounced. But I will tell you this: here's one that just threw me. That Coues deer, that Coues deer was it was fat, which I was stunned at. I mean, this is a desert deer. This is a desert whitetail. There is no agriculture anywhere near this deer at all.
Right. And
it was A, it was fat, and B, this will blow your mind, the fat did not coat your mouth even when cold.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
It's the first deer. I mean, I write in my book, and I write online. I'm going to have to update this thing online, is that deer fat is often semi-unjustly maligned. So everyone says deer fat tastes terrible. Deer fat tastes great. But the problem with all the deer fat I've ever had until this Coues deer is that when it cools, it's made up of stearic acid is the major fatty acid that's in deer fat. And it's this long chain fatty acid that coats your mouth. And it's that mouth coaty, waxy mouthfeel. It's not the flavor, it's the mouthfeel that drives people away from it. And that's justifiable because I don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll use a little bit because I like the flavor of it. It makes a venison sausage taste like a venison sausage. But if I'm doing a 5-pound batch of, say, venison sausage, I'm going to have probably 3 pounds of straight up venison meat, a half a pound of venison fat, and the rest will be pork shoulder.
Nice.
So you have just enough in there, and it's like, yeah, that's a venison sausage, and not just a generic sausage, but not enough to coat your mouth.
Nice. That's interesting that you talk about because the mouthfeel is the thing I think that turns people off. Because you're right. It's like I mean, I love venison, and I don't enjoy that, but I overlook it because I like to eat venison.
If you eat it super hot, like piping hot, it's fantastic.
Right.
It's like shave off like thin shavings and fry them until whatever's left is crispy and eat them hot. with some salt on it, it'll blow your mind.
Oh man. Okay.
You'll be like, "Oh my God, this is great! Where have you been all my life?" But as soon as you get cold, don't touch them.
Don't touch it. Throw it.
Yeah,
out.
you got like a 30-second window, and they're fantastic.
Nice. So I'm curious, man. Like, so we've talked about getting deer from the field,
Catching deer,
catching
them a hug.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them
Catching deers, making sure you're taking care of it the way it needs to get taken care of. So whenever it does hit your plate, that you've done your due diligence on the upfront. Now I'm curious. I want you to give me the Hank Shaw venison dish that even the person who doesn't like venison couldn't deny. What's your go-to?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
It's funny because the most innocuous. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard for me because I have magical chef skills, so
Right.
like I can kind of make anything taste good.
Right.
But I think for most people, would be backstrap.
Right.
It would be a backstrap cooked medium rare with a nice sauce. Like if I were to do a gateway drug venison for everybody, it would be Steak Diane.
Yeah. Okay, Steak Diane. I'm not familiar with what the Steak Diane means. Is that
So Steak Diane, for the record, it's on the recipe's on Hunter Angler Gardner Cook.
Mm-hmm.
You can just Google venison steak Diane and you'll find it. So it's this very old dish, and Diane is really Diana, the huntress.
okay.
It's a 200-plus-year-old French dish where it was originally done with venison backstrap back in the 1800s, and it's seared, rare, medium, or whatever, however you like your steak. And then it's a sauce with a little bit of mustard, a little bit of stock, a little bit of brandy, a little shallot. It's easy to make. It comes together in like a half an hour. And it's one of those, like if you're in your 20s and you want to impress a girl, learn this dish.
There you go.
Because it's the perfect, I kind of know how to cook, but I'm still like wet behind the ears.
Right.
And I want to really show this girl that I'm not just a buffoon. Know this dish.
Right.
It's super. You can do it on an electric heater plate with one frying pan,
Right.
and you can make it, and it's awesome.
But whenever you make this dish, be sure to not tell her that you hot boned the deer because things could just go south from there. So I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help myself.
Then like
Yeah,
have to
exactly.
dirty old man.
Exactly. It's awesome because I actually make something similar to that. It's how I introduced venison to my daughter. My daughter absolutely loves it. When deer season rolls around, she tells me, "Daddy, go to the woods and get me a deer." She's like, "We need more venison," which is awesome to hear. But it's I take the backstrap as you suggest. I cut it into little medallions, and I put a little bit of olive oil in a pan, get it really hot, throw it in for like a minute on each side, roughly, just enough to kind of brown the outside and let it red in the middle. And then I make a bourbon horseradish mushroom white sauce to put over top of it, and then I'll make like asparagus and maybe some type of like starch potato or something like that goes with it, and that's kind of my go-to venison dish. Which
Yeah, I mean that works. Now here's a tip though. Unless you have a Jagunda deer or an elk, don't cut steaks.
Okay.
Cut lengths of backstrap.
Okay.
So like on this Coos deer, I got 4. Like on a big whitetail, like the one in your picture, you probably get 6.
Right.
So cut them in a foot long or whatever, frying pan length. And the way you I mean, this is all in the book and on the website, but you dust them with salt and only salt, and you take them out of the refrigerator and you let them come to room temperature for a solid half hour to 45 minutes. And then you sear them in a pan. I like clarified butter, but you can use you can't use regular butter because it has a low smoke point and you'll burn it.
Right.
You can use butter later, and I'll tell you when.
Okay.
So you sear it off until the whole log, if you will, the whole length of backstrap is done correctly. And if you don't know the finger test for doneness, do you know the finger test for doneness?
I do not.
Sweet. Learning moment.
Exactly.
So I used to work at a steakhouse, and when you work at a steakhouse, we are touching your meat.
Man.
What we do is we sear off one side so it has those pretty cross hatch marks, and then the other side's raw. So when you order a steak, we're finishing your steak to order. So all right. So everybody listening here, hold your hand out loosely, and with your other hand, touch the base of your thumb, that big pad on the base of your thumb, and if you feel that it's kind of gushy, right?
Yeah.
That's what raw meat feels like. Now just touch your thumb to your forefinger. Don't press it, just touch them. Now press that same pad at the base of your thumb one more time. It's stiffened up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's rare. Now go to the middle finger. Do the same thing again.
Oh, wow.
That's medium. See, it's much firmer, but there's still give.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go to your ring finger, see how firm that is?
Yeah.
That's well. And don't make me come to your house.
Right, I was gonna say we could just call that ruined.
No. Do your pinky. Now do your pinky.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you
That's cat food.
That's cat. Nice.
So you do that finger test on the whole length of venison, on the whole backstrap length, and then what you do is then you take it out, and as soon as it comes out, you put a little bit of butter on it and coat it with the fresh butter, and now you roll it in whatever spice mix you want. In spice mix or just black pepper. I usually just do black pepper.
Right.
And then you let it rest a good 5 minutes, and then you cut it into medallions and serve it that way.
There you go.
If you do that, now why would you do that? So the answer is A, the whole thing is cooked totally consistently.
Right.
And B, you have that reveal of all pink meat.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's frankly it's easier. It's way harder to cook the 6 medallions you're going to get out of that perfectly, all of them, than it is to cook the one perfectly. Yeah. So that's the only time I do steaks like that are with elk.
Interesting. I'm going to definitely have to try that because that will definitely up the game on that dish because that's one of my favorite dishes. But you're right. It's like I do struggle. It's like I have to pay a lot of attention if I want to cook everything relatively similarly. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm curious in this two-part or the second part of this question is so moving away from game just for 1 second, what is your beverage of choice when eating venison?
Well, it depends on the day, but if you're going to pin me down on one, I'm going to say a French Côte de Rhône, a French red wine.
Mm-hmm.
And the specific blend that is, in my opinion, the king of all red wines for all game,
mm-hmm.
at least all red meat game, would be Châteauneuf du Pape. It's a blend of often 13 different kinds of grapes, and it's the king of that part of France.
Wow.
It's often you can get really good ones for in the $20 to $30 range.
Mm-hmm.
You can spend more, but for example, if you got a really good Bordeaux or really good California Cab,
mm-hmm.
It costs you $50.
Right.
And here's a wine that is every bit as good, that is not nearly as expensive, and it actually goes better with game.
Nice.
If you were to go the beer route, I'm pretty partial to like a solid brown ale, like brown ales that kind of look like porters.
Yeah.
You could go with a pale,
mm-hmm.
but it has to be an English pale.
Okay.
If you go with an American pale, they're just too hoppy.
Right.
And I love hoppy beers, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to be drinking one soon.
There you go.
But with food, the English style beers work better. They're a lot of the American beers are better drunk by themselves, where you can kind of think about the beer because there's kind of more going on. The English beers and the German beers tend to be better with food. So if you wanted to go German beer route, I would go with like a Spaten Optimator.
Oh yeah,
or a Märzen.
Mm-hmm.
Märzen would be a really good beer with venison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely like my beers. I used to work in a former life whenever I was a musician. I worked at a friend's bar, and it was a craft beer bar, and we had pretty much, I don't even remember, it was like 200 and some odd beers. So it was there's nary a beer, a craft beer or an import beer for that matter, that I haven't tried. Now there's been some new introductions to the market since I worked at this bar, so there's some things that are newer that I haven't had a chance to try, but most everything that we had on the shelf, which was pretty ridiculous. I'm curious, man, what is if someone were going to start out, so say someone just started hunting, right? And they're mm-hmm. and they want to hunt because they say they want to hunt because they want to hunt to eat, right? Say that's the approach.
Yep.
What is the best game meat, do you think, for someone that's just starting out cooking wild game that is going to give them the best opportunity to be successful with the dish? Is there like one that's kind of like a beginner game meat that you would feel that can take a lot of abuse to a degree?
Well, I mean, I don't know no, but if you're just starting to hunt and you are in whitetail country I would say hunt whitetails. I would say shoot yourself a whitetail doe and start there, because they tend to be tender. No, you do have the fat issue, but I mean, here's the thing. I mean, if you're in the wild world, fat is gold.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have not bought meat or fish for the house more than a handful of times since 2005.
That's awesome.
Fat is at a huge premium for us. So that's why I give away a lot of salmon every year, because I catch a lot of salmon, but I never give away bellies.
Right.
And we are blessed with wintering ducks and geese. So our ducks and geese are fat. We render out somewhere between a half a gallon and a gallon of wild duck fat every year, because we have that opportunity. Bear hunters often have the opportunity for a lot of fat. Virtually nobody else does. You know, I mean, it's if you hunt ducks and they're migrating, they tend to be skinny. And almost all upland birds are skinny. Rabbits are skinny. Squirrels are skinny. I mean, sometimes I've had fat squirrels, but you know, no one's gonna confit a squirrel in its own fat. This is not gonna happen. You know.
Oh, that would be awesome, actually.
I mean, now it's like challenge accepted, right?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. So, man, I want to be sensitive to your time, man. But I do have two last questions before I let you go, and I'll just kind of combine the two of them. So, is there anything that you've tried as far as wild game that you're just like, nah, not a fan? And two, is what is the weirdest thing by your standards that you've ever made or ever cooked, game that you've ever cooked and eaten? Yeah.
So the stuff that I'm just not a fan of, I'm not a fan of brains of any kind. I guess I'm a bad zombie.
Right.
I don't love big hunks of liver.
Okay.
Like, I like bird livers, but I have tried 6 ways to Sunday to make, you know, a big old slab of, say, venison liver taste great, and I just don't like it. I use the livers. I use them for lots of things, but I'm not going to do like a big old slab of liver. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Muskrat, we talked about that. They taste like the bottom of a pond, and don't ask me how I know.
Right.
So they're gross. Mergansers. Like, I'm never going to shoot a merganser.
Right.
Like, you know, the lawn darts are not for eating. You know, but that's about it. I mean, there's not a lot of. I have a friend who's a trapper in Missouri who he eats skunks.
Whoa. Yeah, I don't know how to get down with that.
He's like, it's just a big old squirrel with a stinky butt, you know, and like, all right, you go for yours, man.
Right.
So yeah, I have limits, and I don't eat dogs or cats of any kind.
Right.
So like no coyotes, no bobcats, no lions. It's just I'm okay with other people doing it. I choose not to.
Right.
Now, the weirdest thing that I think of ever cooked and eaten, you know, weird by human standards and not mine. I would think the venison tripe is up there.
Yeah.
The crispy fried duck tongues is up there too.
Ooh, crispy fried duck.
So the venison tripe, just because tripe's not in and of itself weird, but to actually do it from a wild animal, that's pretty sporty.
Right.
I have full instructions on how to do it in the cookbook, by the way. So like, I'm really hoping that someday somebody emails me and says, I actually did it and it was actually good. This can make me so happy. Like, so far, like, this book has been out over a year and I haven't gotten that email. So
right. Well,
come on, guys.
Well, maybe it actually ends up under the tree for me this year, and I could be that guy. I could be your Huckleberry.
There you go. And then the crispy fried duck tongues are super sporty as well. So if you eat a lot of Chinese food where Chinese people actually eat Chinese food,
right? So
if you go to a Chinese restaurant and there's like a bunch of Chinese people there, chances are there will be a duck tongue recipe on the menu somewhere.
Nice.
They're not wasteful people. So
yeah.
So the duck tongues are often about the size of your pinky, and they have this little bone in the back of them, and they stir fry them, and I don't really much like them. And then I realized, well, you know what? You can take that bone out. So I will collect the tongues from the big ducks and geese that I hunt all year long, and then I will braise them and then pull that bone out. So then what you're left with is meat, collagen, and fat. And then you dehydrate that about halfway. Why? because if you crispy fry something that's been braised and it's super full of collagen and fat, it will explode in your face. Ask me how I know.
Yeah. It sounds like someone might have learned from experience.
Yes. Picking them off my forehead.
Right.
So you dehydrate them halfway, and then you dust them in rice flour or cornstarch, and then you crispy fry them then, and you serve them with a dipping sauce. Oh my God.
Nice.
Like, I guarantee if I put a platter of these out and didn't tell anybody what they were, they'd go in seconds.
Right.
Because it's crispy, ducky, fatty.
Nice. Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good dish for around the holiday season when you have a lot of people over. And maybe you just do some correctly and maybe you do some incorrectly to where some exploded, some don't, and you just kind of sit back and let the party come to you. You know what I mean?
Or, you put them out on the platter, like on New Year's Eve, you put them out at like 11. So everybody's all 3 sheets to the wind already. You're like,
Yes.
That's the greatest thing I've ever eaten. Like, what is it, duck tongues?
Yeah, exploding duck tongue. That's great. Hey, man, so I want to be sensitive to your time here, like I'd mentioned. So I want to say thank you first and foremost for coming on and joining the show. I learned a ton. I'm sure everyone out there listening learned a ton about just the different ways to approach venison and then a couple of the different dishes that you shared. But before I let you go, if you wouldn't mind, let the folks out there listening know where they can find out more about you and where they can get their hands on some of these cookbooks.
Sure. So all of my books are available on Amazon. They are also available if you're a non-Amazon person wherever fine books are sold. So yeah, I mean, you can get them in bookstores. Is what I'm saying. And if you, depending on where you live, you can even find some in Costco.
Nice.
So just, my name it's 8 letters, Hank Shaw, HANKSHAW. If you Google that, you'll find pretty much everything. My website is Hunter Angler Gardener Cook, and I'm on Instagram as Hunt Gather Cook. I do a lot on Instagram. I do a lot on Facebook. I run a forum called Hunt Gather Cook. It's a closed forum, so I have to let you in. If you say that you heard us on this podcast, I will let you in. That means you're not a bot.
Right.
And then I do a fair bit on Twitter also, where I'm Hank Shaw. But you can probably find the coolest stuff on that Facebook forum, on my website, and on Instagram.
Nice. And guys, be sure to give him a follow. I've been following Hank on Instagram, and the food that you you share, it makes my mouth water while I'm at work most days and makes me extremely hungry. And if you have a special hunter gatherer in your family, around the holiday season here, the cookbook would make an excellent gift for that person. So Hank, thanks for coming on, my man, and happy holidays to you. Have a safe and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and have a great 2018. I hope it brings you tons of exploding duck tongues.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks, man. Take care.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. We'd like to thank Hank for joining us and would, of course, like to thank all of you for listening. If any of you will be headed to the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, please let me know. I'll be there at the Exodus booth the weekend of February 3rd, so make sure to stop by, say hi. I like the opportunity to meet as many of you as possible and talk a little deer hunting to see how your season went and what you're looking forward to next year. Also, if you haven't yet, if it's not too much to ask, please head over to to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you would take a quick moment and do that for us. Of course, we need to give a big shout out to our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. Wicked Tree Gear, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Tecumani Seed, and Glacier Coolers. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
I ain't welcome anymore. A long time coming, if it all. It takes a special knowing to color for damaged heads, broken letters. Rationalize yourself in numbers, but I